Hey guys, Coach Adam talking to you again today with another Bikini Pro Show review. Today we're going to be covering the Iron Games and also the Masters World Championships that happened over the weekend. We're going to go over a few different age divisions in the Masters World Championships. Awesome looking competitors at that show. A real throwdown actually. But first, let's go ahead and jump into the Iron Games where Eureka gets another win with blocking another Olympia spot. It was Eureka versus Malu at the end there, a real close competition. And we also had Maya jumping back into another show. We've been seeing a lot of Maya this year. Let's go ahead and assess her physique first before we go into the battle of Malu and Eureka. So looking at Maya, this show I think was her best package to date. I've actually seen her compete twice this year at different types of conditioning. One time she was a little bit soft, and one time she was actually probably way too hard at one of the shows here in Vegas. But at this show, she looks right on point. You know, you can see that she's not overly conditioned in her core, but she's still very hard. She's bringing in great tie-ins where they're full tie-ins, but not etched in tie-ins. You're not seeing the separation and glute separation lines that you were seeing before. She had strided glutes in Vegas at one point, and then in Denver, she was just a little bit too soft. So it was just a battle of pushing and pulling here. This is her first year back, so you're going to get that. Now, she has really dense muscle, too. Dense muscle that has some deep grooves in it, some deep separation lines in it. So that's going to be a harder muscle to really nail because you have to nail that conditioning, because lean for her looks way too lean because you're seeing those deep separations and that density. And then soft is starting to look really soft because she has to get so soft to hide those lines. So it's finding that perfect balance with her is going to be the difficult thing. And as you can see, every bikini competitor is going to have their issue, whether it's their shoulders need to look bigger or their issues like this, or they have body fat distribution issues. And it's all about figuring out that special formula that's going to get her to work. And I think that this one is the closest formula that she's had. So I'm really happy to see this. She looks really good. She looks really balanced at this show. It's strange is that I think that this is one of her better physiques that she's brought this year, but she didn't place as high as she has placed this year at earlier shows. So, you know, that's how it goes. That's just the luck of a bikini. There's the luck of the draw there. Who's going to show up that day? Who's got momentum? Who's in the limelight? Who they're looking for? That type of thing, and who just stands out that day a little bit more. But I'm happy she got a 5th place at this show. Her last show she was right out of the placings, just a bit out of placing. So this one she's back in the medaling, and I think that this is her best physique. I think she just needs to keep bringing physique like this, make slight improvements. Probably going to take her a couple more shows to really figure out the formula, but I'm really happy with what I'm seeing. Look at her shape. Great hourglass shape, great 3D glutes. Tie-ins are there, but they're not etched in tie-ins. Good roundness to the hamstring without too much overall detail. Now, she does have deep grooves in her muscle. She is going to be getting some striations in them, and it's just for her, it's a matter of balancing them out. But I think that this is a good balance for her. The shoulders look nice and wide. There's nice detail to them. Now, in her front pose, the one critique I would give in her front pose would be this arm, I think, is a little too far in front. It makes her arm look a little bit bigger than it needs to be in bikini. Just tucking it back a tiny bit, not even a lot, just tucking it back a tiny bit would make that arm look more proportionate. It wouldn't look like it's overpowering the shoulder. And then really that's me just nitpicking at it because she's doing a really, really good job, look balanced from upper to lower. But when you look at her quads, they are a little dense. I don't think they're overly big, but they are very dense and they have those deep grooves in them. And that's going to be the hard thing for her, is balancing out her conditioning from upper lower body, for not showing those deep grooves and looking overly strided, because when she gets lean, she looks way too lean. And it's not about her being way too lean. It's that her grooves in her muscle are so deep. You could just see them right through that when she gets lean, as regular girls get lean in bikini, because she's so dense and has those deep grooves, which is a good thing. It's a blessing and a curse, but I wish her luck and hope she keeps going. I would love to see her get to the Olympia. She's got a few more weeks left. It's going to get tough because you just have girls that have already qualified the Olympia jumping into shows. It's going to get real exciting this last part of the year. You have Jourdain still has to get on stage. A lot of people are being active again. I hear Amy's going to be coming back to the stage. You had Issa that just competed. A lot of people who are getting ready for the Olympia are going to be jumping into shows. So it's going to be an exciting time. We still haven't seen Daraja. I know she's coming back in. She has to get qualified for the Olympia. So you can imagine she's going to be coming up pretty soon here. So there's going to be some real throwdowns these last few weeks. This should be the most exciting month. The next 5 weeks should be the most exciting time in bikini this year. So let's go ahead and jump in to the battle of Malu and Eureka. So the battle of Malu and Eureka was a good battle. Eureka being an Olympia blocker and blocking an Olympia spot. A bittersweet moment because I actually really want Malu to get to the Olympia. She deserves it. She's an awesome person. She works for Muscle Contest. I see her all the time in Vegas here, and she's always so fun. Now, looking at Malu, and here's the thing with Malu. I've seen her a couple times, and it seems like the first show she comes back after she takes a little break or some time off, it seems like the first show she really hits with a bang. Like she comes in and she's full and she's vibrant. And as the shows go on, she starts to kind of not fade out, but get smaller as the shows go on and gets a little bit more flat as the shows go on. Some people, they can compete all the time like Ashley and stay full and stay good. But even Ashley, after 3 shows in a row, she'll start kind of fading and start getting a little flatter. And we have to take a little bit of time to fill it back up. It looks like Malu goes through a similar thing, but it happens really quickly for her. And you see that happen. I don't know if it's because of how much cardio she's doing, or maybe she's working out less during the peak weeks and it's starting to accumulate when she does a couple shows. I don't know the scenario, but it is obvious to me, or at least it's happened the last few times where she's done multiple shows. But what I can say is she's taken a little bit of time off. She's come back. She looks full. She looks round. She looks really, really good. She has that perfect bikini conditioning where it's that soft, pretty muscle. On stage, her posing routine is crazy. If you ever get to see her in person, make sure you're paying attention to how she's doing her posing routine because it is just crazy. One of the best posing routines that there is in bikini. It's impossible not to look at her when she's competing. When she comes out, she just has light on her. It's that thing like you don't know why you're looking at her. You just can't take your eyes off of that X factor, right? So awesome routine. Now looking at her and her overall fullness this time, it's great. It's great fullness. The conditioning's good. You could see great detail in the legs, full roundness and fullness to the quads and the glutes. Kind of that more of that Jessica Wilson type of muscle where it's round and pretty, but it's not overly strong or dense. Definitely a big difference between her and Maya. This is more of that bikini pretty muscle where it's not dense, not striated and deep, right? If you look at her next to Jessica, it would be kind of similar muscles and how they look, the flow of the muscle, the prettiness of the muscle, the complexion, everything's there. Now, one thing I think Malu can do is actually turn her shoulders over more profile because she's still looking a little bladed with her shoulders in that front pose, not showing her total width. She's more of a petite competitor, so she needs to get every inch of that width that she can, and I think she can turn these shoulders over more. Even if it means opening up her waist over a little bit more, it's worth the exchange because she's going to get maybe a ½ inch to 1 inch wider on the waist for maybe 2 inches on the shoulders. That's a good exchange, and her shoulders just look a little bit smaller than Eureka here. Eureka definitely overpowers her on the shoulders. And Eureka is giving a full profile shoulder, a lot less bladed, right? The other thing that Eureka beats her is her overall lat width. So Eureka is kind of what we call cheating the lat, where you're opening it up just a little bit, where the judges can't really tell that you're opening up and it looks like your natural shape. But she is doing that and giving this very impressive, V taper. It is kind of crossing towards that X frame kind of factor. Malu definitely has more of the hourglass curvy shape, but she's not crossing over it too much. But you could see here, big, strong shoulder base, good lat. It's starting to edge on the X frame, which is the judges don't want, but it's not there yet. And that's usually how bikini goes. You want to push it to a limit, but not go over that limit. And if you go over that limit too much, you get dinged really hard and you get, 10th place by if she just opened up a little bit more type of thing. But she's pushing it exactly where she needs to. I think that's where she needs to be doing it, especially going into these big shows like the Olympia, where there is going to be a lot of muscle, a lot of density, a lot more muscle at a show like that. Now, looking at her leg conditioning and the density of her legs, there is more density to her overall legs, but not too much. It's not overly round, overly developed. I can see why Eureka wins on this one. She's just a little bit more of an advanced physique when it comes to the overall muscle, the overall strength. She kind of overpowers Malu. So I don't think she crosses past the point of being too big or anything, but she does outsize Malu quite a bit, and that's where Malu takes the loss from the front pose. So I want to show you actually a funny thing on the back end of things. So when I pulled up Malu from the back, so as I do these kind of reviews, I'm kind of doing them live and I'm looking at their physique and kind of I'll run through them and look at them real quick and this sort of thing. But I didn't pull up their pictures side by side in the back. When I pulled them up side by side in the back, I was like, wow, Malu's actually really good from the back on this one. I actually would have her beating Eureka from the back. I need to look up these scorecards. I just went into it assuming because Eureka won recently and she's gotten as high as 12th at the Olympia before that she had a perfect score against Malu, who hasn't gotten to the Olympia yet. Safe assumption, usually that's the way it goes. But then I saw Malu from the back and I'm like, this might have been a lot closer. And I'm in here with Milena. I was like, I need to pause the video. Let's look up these scorecards, let's really break this down. And I found out it was a 1-point decision. And actually, I'm like, that makes way more sense. Because looking at them from the back, I actually have Malu beating Eureka. And I'm sorry, Eureka, but Malu, man, she looks great from the back. Shocked how good she, it literally had to stop the whole video. I was like, this has to be closer than I think it was. And I could see how the judges had a tough time with this one because it is not an easy decision. So one person basically decided it. And it's crazy when it's like that at the Olympia. I've been pushed out of the Olympia with a couple of my girls. I've had it happen to me, I want to say, 2 times 1 point and more than 2 times, like probably 3 times by 2 to 3 points, where we just didn't get a girl to the Olympia because of it. And it's heartbreaking. It sucks when it happens. And it's like, so much goes into it. It comes down to the last show and it's like one of these things. And it's like, man, that's such a heartbreaking thing. So, but it also shows you how close you are at the same time. Most of those girls got to the Olympia the next year. So Malu is knocking on the door. I hope that she continues because from the back, wow, she looks crazy good. So looking at her from the back, the main thing is where she really beats Eureka is the fullness of and roundness of the glute on this upper outer edge. So I call it 3D glutes. When you have those pop out glutes where your waistline's here and then you have the 3D glutes that kind of pop way out here and you have that hourglass shape that really just pops. Malu definitely has it, and she has it in the key areas, that upper outer edge, that roundness and fullness, where you see Eureka still needs a little bit more on this upper outer edge right here. And to be honest, Malu kind of really beats her there. There's no comparison if you're looking at, when you look at the complete glute and you look at the upper to lower glute, you look at a balance between the entire glute, it's not really close. It's not close at all, actually. So when you look at the tie-in, it gets a little closer. But even there, Malu beats her in the tie-in. She has the complete tie-in without it being an etched-in tie-in. As you see, Eureka, they're not full tie-ins, right? So you could say she can get a little bit tighter or maybe push a little bit harder in that back pose to get that full tie-in without it being an etched tie-in. But if you look at Malu, you could see the tie-in at all angles, all the way down without being an etched tie-in. Really hard to nail that type of conditioning without going over the top to get that pretty bikini conditioning. And you can tell the conditioning's nailed because she doesn't have any vertical separation to the hamstrings. The hamstrings are really round and developed. And you could see with Eureka, again, really good roundness to her hamstrings, but there's also a little bit of separation in there, right? Now, lighting's going to be a factor here. It shows how she's walking, how she's moving. But in terms of conditioning, I think Malu has actually better conditioning from the back for bikini. I think that Eureka has better conditioning in general, a little bit tighter, but Malu has that pretty muscle, that pretty conditioning, that bikini conditioning where it's still full and round. Now, the only part where she gets beat in the back, though, is the upper body. Eureka really beats her from the upper body. Just as bad as Malu beats Eureka from the lower body, Eureka beats her from the upper body from the back. She has the width to her shoulders. She has the V-taper that we've talked about earlier. And if you look at Malu, she just doesn't have that shoulder width, and her hair's not helping her. It's hiding her shoulder width. Especially on this right shoulder, the hair being on top of the shoulder is really hurting her. I think that if she had her hair straight and it went down her back, it can make her look a little bit wider up top. And then if she just gave just the tiniest bit of width to her upper body from the back pose, she might have won the show. I don't know. It was 1 point, so it could have been the difference because she's losing from the upper body, winning from the lower body by a far margin. If anyone's winning in this show from like a far margin, if you broke up the body in quarters, it would be Malu from the back. If you're looking at just the front, Eureka, she wins. From the legs, it's close. It could go either way, but from the upper body and both front and back, Eureka really blows her out of the water. With the core detail, Eureka, blows her out of the water. And then when you look at the back, I mean, it's all Malu from the lower body. And honestly, from the back, that's really what you're looking at mostly. So it's a really close one. I imagine that was a really tough one. When you take all things into consideration and Malu's posing routine and stage presence on top of that, pretty tough to beat. So hats off to Eureka for beating her because something like stage presence can win a show for you. If it's this close, which it was, I'm actually surprised that Eureka did get the win on this one, because I do know her stage presence for Malu is so good. Eureka's is good too, but Malu's is on a whole nother level. So crazy show. That would have been a fun one to watch. Actually, now that I'm seeing this, I wish I would have watched that one. But let's go ahead and jump into the Masters World Championships. I love when the Masters shows come around. We get to give them some light. And it's something that I get a lot of requests for. So when I get the opportunity, I'm going to go for it. And there were some awesome Masters at this show here. So first up, winning the 40+ division Masters World Championships, we have Jill Humphrey, and awesome physique for Jill. So what I want to do is look at these physiques that won their classes and look at, okay, what is it going to take for them to win the Olympia, the Masters Olympia, as a lot of these competitors now are going to be headed to the Masters Olympia next year, now that that's back. So this is going to be really exciting. It's a great add to Bikini. I'm really happy that they're adding the Masters to it. And what is it going to take for her to get to that top 5 at that Masters Olympia? And the only thing, too, that I'm not 100% sure of is how are they going to qualify people for the Masters Olympia? Is it winning a Masters Pro Show going to get you a qualification to the Olympia, or is it going to be invitation only? I don't know how that's going to go yet. I don't think there's a finalized word on how that's going to go. It would make a lot of sense that it would be, maybe the top 5 of this year, which is great because Los Angeles, my girl, got in there. Hopefully she goes back next year to the Masters Olympia. But it would make sense that if you won a Masters show, that you'd get to the Masters Olympia. And if you win the Masters Olympia, that qualifies you actually for the Olympia. So what is it going to take for her to get to the highest level and maybe even win the Masters Olympia, which she's definitely capable of with that structure and physique? Let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, looking at her physique, I mean, great lines, crazy lines. That clavicle width is insane. Look at that clavicle to waistline ratio. That is crazy good. That is an insane structure in terms of clavicle width and waistline. Now, roundness to the hamstring, roundness to the glute in that front pose. Not a whole lot to work on there. And honestly, from the front, there's really just not a ton to work on. Now, the thing is, when you have someone that's this extreme, you have to be careful with being too extreme in that front pose. I think that she's posing really relaxed for how muscular her structure is, and I think that helps her a lot, and I think that was done strategically. You won't see petite girls posing kind of this relaxed. Most girls are going to be a little wider, a little bit more filling out their frame up top, standing more upright, up tall, right? So she's doing everything she needs to, knowing that she has a very powerful structure from the front, and she's not overpowering everyone too much. And I think that was a very smart strategic ploy on her. Now, looking at her from the front, there's really not a lot I think she needs to work on going into a Masters Olympia level. I would say more than anything, just be careful that you're not getting your shoulders too detailed and too capped off, because they are bordering on that. And if you give yourself another year of hard training, you might push yourself over the edge. And always be cautious of your posing, because she is really muscular. And it's going to have to be something that she's aware of when she's next to girls with smaller frames of, should I be putting my elbow all the way in front and posing really strong? Should I be pulling it back and relaxing my posing a little bit? She's going to have a good stage IQ when she moves up the ranks to these higher levels of like winning a Masters Olympia type of show. Now, the one area that she can work on this year is going to be from the back. Of course, it's always from the back, right? At Bikini, it's a never-ending pursuit of getting the glutes right. So when we're talking winning a Masters Olympia level and getting to that level, we're going to need a little bit more development in these upper outer edge of the glute. But a good thing for her is she doesn't need any more muscle up top. In her upper body, her quads, I mean, even the hamstrings from the front pose, she needs no work really. She can just basically bring this. So she has basically a whole year to work on the couple little areas that she needs to work on. And that's a lot of time and dedication you can give yourself to one area. And that's the thing. As you start advancing in Bikini, you get into Bikini sculpting, not so much Bikini building, right? So you start off, you do bodybuilding, you're just lifting everything, you're trying to get everything bigger. Then you choose you're going to do Bikini, then you're kind of doing more targeted muscles towards Bikini, called Bikini building. And then once you get all this muscle built up, you're just looking at key areas. So you're doing Bikini sculpting, which is a whole different thing. And you're putting all of your time and efforts into key areas. And then that's when you see this rapid changing of the physique, because the weak areas are now brought up. The areas that are already strong are just staying there. It's not going to take her a whole lot to maintain those shoulders for a year. She's probably going to do like one exercise a week of shoulders, maybe just a couple, one exercise of front, one mid, one rear, and she's probably going to keep those shoulders and maybe work up a little bit come showtime. But she's got 3 days a week, 4 days a week where she can really focus on those glutes. The tie-ins are already there. They could be a little bit better, a little bit more detailed, and that just means more size. the upper outer edge of the glute and getting those 3D glutes, those pop out hourglass glutes, she's going to need a little bit more of, and she's going to be able to spend that time on and hopefully get there by next year. So someone to definitely look for. Really impressed with this overall physique and structure. But yeah, awesome. Very clear winner. I could see why she won. Now, going into the 50-plus winner, Susan Price, I got some news for you girls out there that think Masters is going to be an easier route of travel. It is not. These girls, it's crazy. You know, it's funny because we're still trying to figure out like what that age is, right, in bikini, and we don't know what the age is in bikini. You know, we know kind of a cutoff where the age is in bodybuilding, which seems to be in that like kind of mid-40s where guys start losing their legs a little bit. But we don't have an age cutoff for bikini, you know, especially with how much muscle they have now and how tight you have to be. It almost seems like it gives a little bit of an advantage to people who have a little bit older skin. You know, that as you get older, your skin tends to thin out a little bit. You can see the muscle a little bit better. So we don't know that perfect age for a bikini. No one is kind of aged out of bikini. They've you know, people who've been around for a while have maybe had kids or they stopped competing, but they didn't stop because of their age. It hasn't been one of those things. We've seen people stop because of their age in bodybuilding, but we haven't seen it because of bikini. You haven't heard of bikini girl like, oh yeah, I'm 45 now and I can't compete. Like no one's said that. You have people winning shows. Jessica Wilson just won the Masters Olympia, which is 40 plus, and she wins open shows all the time. Aaron Stern wins open shows here and there, right? So it's like, we don't know what that age is. And when you see someone like this at 50 plus who looks this good, you're like, okay, we still don't know what the age is in bikini. Is it going to be, you know, is it 50? I don't know. You know, so that's the cool thing about bikini. And I think a lot of people will think, like Masters competitors think, oh, I'm too old now to really do anything in the sport. And I'm like, yeah, there's Masters Olympia now as an option. And if you look at it, if you think it's going to be easier because maybe there's a smaller pool of people doing it, I'm sorry, the girls at the top are just as good and just as developed. So looking at her, there is no sign of her needing any more muscle. That's for sure. So the one thing I will say is looking at her, she does pose really strong, a little bit rigid in her front pose. That's something that I would be careful with because she is so muscular. Those shoulders are really, really rounded and really capped off. She's pushing out that lat a lot. That would fall into definitely an X-frame lat with how much she's pushing it. And what I would tell you is you got all the muscle that you need. You know, you don't need any muscle. You're going to be overpowering almost everyone there on that stage. So just tone it down a little bit on that front pose. Make it look a little bit more relaxed. Focus on that hourglass shape, not so much that X-frame shape where you're sticking your lat out so much because you just don't need it. You have all the muscle in the world. Pose a tiny bit more relaxed. It's going to help her, especially at a show like the Masters Olympia, which I imagine she'll probably get to next year. I think that she could do really, really well there because she has the 3D glutes. Look at the glute to waist ratio. Like that's a pretty far ratio of glute width to waist. Tiny, tiny waistline, great shoulders. The one thing I think that is actually helping her is her shoulders are so wide and her waist is so small and they're so developed that I do think her having her hair kind of blocking a little bit of her shoulder width actually helps her. She might look a little too overpowering if she showed full shoulders. So this is a very rare occasion where I say, you know what? It's okay to have the hair kind of covering some of those shoulders because they are so strong and she does have so much width to her. So as far as the tie-ins go, great. When you get into the Masters divisions, you'll have a little bit more vertical separation because, again, the skin is a little bit thinner. So you have a little bit more density, a little bit more vertical separation in the legs. But everything looks really good there. The skin's very tight. The roundness is there. You know, there's not anything that's like overly striated. So great overall physique, great package. I hope to see her at the Masters Olympia. Actually, a real contender at the Masters Olympia, but I do think the posing needs to be reserved a little bit. That's the area she could improve on. As far as the physique goes and improving on the overall physique, there's not a whole lot to work on her. And that's what I expect when you're winning Masters Pro shows. There's not going to be a whole lot to work on. It's going to be the little things, you know? I do see she could get a tiny bit more development in her tie-in. That's just a tiny bit more detail. But even then, it's not going to be that much of a game changer for her. It's not like it's totally different. She's already really, really close to being where she needs to be. So hats off to her. I hope to see her at the Olympia next year too. Winning the 60 plus, Janine Priest. And again, like we talked about earlier, if you think it's going to be easy because you're 60, I'm sorry to tell you, the girls are just as good. I've seen Janine for years. I've seen her at a lot of events like Angels events, Angel competition, bikini events. I've seen her around. She is a super active competitor, super serious about it. This is definitely her sport and hobby, and she does take it seriously. You could see on her physique, she's been putting in the work. So looking at her overall physique, great shoulder width, great shoulder detail. I do think she can pose a little wider. She has a little bit more of a narrow clavicle base, and she's not showing it as wide as she can. Now, just as I said with the last competitor, how she's sticking her lats out a little bit too much to create that width, I actually think for her, it would help her get a little bit more width. And just opening up those shoulders just a hair in that front pose and showing more clavicle width, just more overall from the front instead of being a little bit bladed, I think will help her quite a bit. And I think that in an area where she's going to improve on from year to year is a little bit more shoulder width, a little bit more lat width. From the front pose, she's doing everything right. She's showing a great glute profile, great roundness to the hamstrings. A tiny bit more size, I think, on her legs would help balance out her core. So she could get a little bit wider in the shoulders, show a little bit more width, a little bit more on the lats, and a little bit thicker on the legs because she does have a really wide hip base. That's a great thing. She has those 3D glutes, that wide hip base, but she needs to offset her waistline a little bit by getting just a little bit thicker on the arms, on the legs, and on the shoulders, which will make her waistline look a little bit smaller, as well as her posing. I think that she can work on her flexibility, on her posing a little bit, get a little bit more of that back arch, which is going to make her glutes look more 3D. And that goes for everyone. You got to stretch that back. Make sure you get your arch a little bit better because the farther your lower back is away from your glutes, the smaller your waistline is going to look from that back pose. So if you can get a real good arch, your waistline will look a little bit smaller. I think the other thing that'll help is if she can cover this area with her hair the next time and show her shoulders, how I talked about the last competitor where she was hiding her shoulders. I think for her, she needs to have her hair going down the middle of her back and showing as much of the shoulder as she can, but getting a little bit down here, hiding that waistline a tiny bit, and then getting more back arch. So all in all, really good physique, just a little bit more to go in terms of the roundness of the hamstring, the quad, the shoulders, but still very, very good physique. Hopefully that she can get to the Masters Olympia too, but congratulations at winning this one. What an awesome, I'm really happy to see her wings. I see her all over the place. She must have been thrilled, so I'm happy for her. So congratulations to you. So that is a wrap up. That's what we got for this weekend. Remember, it is going to be getting crazy this last bit of time. This is the time to be watching if you're a bikini competitor because there is going to be so much going on these last 5 weeks. It is so exciting. And then we got the Olympia around the corner. Oh man, it's going to be good. So TeamElitePhysique.com for worldwide online contest prep. I'll talk to you guys next week.